sun hit different that morning. It wasn't the heat, it was the stillness. The kind that holds its breath before something breaks. Isaiah didn't know what that meant. Not yet. He was only 11, sitting on the wooden porch of their little home on Lenox Street, legs dangling off the edge, fingers twisting the hem of his shirt. White kids pedaled past, laughing, kicking up dust with their tires. They never looked his way, and he didn't expect them to. That was just how it was. One of them, a boy with freckles and red hair, locked eyes with him for a split second, just enough to make Isaiah look down, like he'd done something wrong just by watching. Isaiah didn't understand the rules of the world yet, but he knew there were rules, unspoken ones that wrapped around his family like a tight cord. You don't look too long. You don't speak too loud. You don't go past Mr. Hargreaves' store, even though it's got the best candy in town. And you definitely don't answer the door unless Mama tells you to. That morning, his daddy, Elijah, was inside getting dressed for work. He worked the trains, wore those heavy blue coveralls that never seemed to get fully clean, no matter how many times Mama scrubbed him. Isaiah loved the smell of his father's hands, grease, metal, and something warm, like safety. The kind of safety that makes you think the world can't touch you, but it could dot, it did. The sound came first. Tires on gravel, fast, then doors slamming, heavy boots. Isaiah turned his head and saw the white man walking fast up the steps below. One was young, the other had gray in his mustache and a long face like a bloodhound. His mama stepped out the screen door with a dish towel still in her hands. "Can I help y'all?" she said, voice tight but polite. Elijah came out behind her, halfway through buttoning his shirt. He didn't look scared. He didn't have time to. The older cop said his name, without looking at him. "Elijah Turner, you're under arrest." "For what?" Alma asked. "We got a statement." "Don't need to tell you more than that." The younger one muttered, already reaching for his cuffs. Isaiah stood. Everything in him wanted to shout, to run, to grab onto his father's leg, but his feet didn't move. His hands gripped the porch rail so tight he thought the wood might splinter. Elijah didn't fight, didn't curse. He looked at Isaiah, just for a second, and there was something in his eyes that Isaiah would never forget. Not fear, not even anger. It was a goodbye that he couldn't say out loud. Alma screamed then, not a scream of surprise. It was the kind that starts deep in your bones and pulls everything out with it. "Elijah, you ain't done nothing." The neighbors came out. Doors opened. Blinds moved. But nobody stepped in. Nobody said a word. Isaiah watched as they pushed his father down the steps. The handcuffs clicked, sharp and final. The police car door slammed shut. And then it was just quiet again. Dust settled back to the ground. The white kids on bikes had disappeared. Alma dropped to her knees on the porch, the dish towel still clutched in her hand. That's how the day went. Nobody explained. Nobody came back. And Isaiah, he sat right back down where he started, legs dangling, staring down Lenox Street, trying to figure out what part of him had broken. They never talked about it again. Not once. After that day on the porch, Elijah Turner's name was erased from the dinner table, from Sunday prayers, from the walls of that house, like he was never real. Alma didn't explain where he went or what happened, and Isaiah stopped asking, not because he didn't care, because he knew better than to poke around in a wound that deep. He grew up with that silence, like a second skin. They moved through life like ghosts. Elijah's tools stayed in the shed, untouched. His chair in the living room stayed empty, not out of respect, but because Alma couldn't bring herself to move it. The air in that house was heavy, like something sacred had died, and nobody was allowed to say its name. Isaiah was 12 when the landlord raised the rent. Same house, same cracked porch, same rust-stained sink, but suddenly it cost more to live there. Market's changing, the man said, without looking Alma in the eye. She nodded, even though she knew the truth. Their name was stained now, marked. No man in the house, no protection, just a widow who wasn't allowed to mourn. The laundromat stopped hiring her. The bakery stopped selling them day-old bread. And the church where Elijah had sung baritone every Sunday started forgetting to mention him in the morning announcements. Isaiah watched all of it. He saw how his mama swallowed her grief like it might burn the house down if she let it out. She cleaned houses during the week, big white homes on the nicer side of town. She'd come home with her hands raw from bleach, her silence sharper than broken glass. He knew whose houses they were, the sheriff's wife, the mayor's sister. One woman even smiled at him once when she passed them at the grocery store, asked how school was going. She was wearing the same earrings Isaiah had seen on the dresser when he helped his mother vacuum under her bed. By 14, Isaiah had already learned the rules most boys didn't face until they were grown. Keep your eyes down. Speak just enough to not seem rude. Never run in public. Never wear your hoodie up unless it's raining, and even then, only lightly. His teachers said he was bright, quick, a good writer. One of them even pulled him aside once and said, "You're not like the others, Isaiah. You've got a future." He didn't know what that meant back then, but it didn't sound like a compliment. By 15, he stopped smiling in pictures. By 16, he stopped going to the corner store after dark. He learned how racism didn't always scream. Sometimes it just whispers behind your back, locks the door before you get there, or gives your friend the job you were more qualified for. He started writing, quietly, in a worn notebook he kept hidden under his bed, pages full of questions, anger, poems, letters to a father who couldn't read them, letters that started with "Where did you go?" and ended with "Are you proud of me?" One day, Alma found that notebook. She didn't say anything. She just left it on the kitchen table with a folded $20 bill on top. That was her way of saying, keep going. There were moments, small ones, that made the silence feel less cruel. A neighbor who dropped off soup when Alma caught the flu. A bus driver who let Isaiah ride for free on rainy days. A teacher who slipped him a copy of Native Son and whispered, "Don't let him shrink you." But even in those moments, Isaiah felt the weight of everything that had been stolen. He wasn't angry all the time. Not yet, but something inside him stayed warm, low, like coals after a fire. He carried it in his chest, a steady, quiet burn, and every now and then, when the wind was right and the streets were empty, he'd sit on the porch, same spot, same swing, and think about that day, about the goodbye in his father's eyes, about the neighbors who didn't speak, about the life that had been snatched, not with a gun, but with a uniform and a lie. Isaiah didn't know it yet, but that burn inside him, that was the beginning of something. It came in a thin envelope, cream-colored, with a maroon seal on the corner. No fanfare, no ceremony, just slipped into their rusted mailbox like it was any other bill. Isaiah stood there for a moment, staring at it, hands trembling. He didn't even open it right away. He just knew Morehouse full scholarship, tuition, books, dorm, everything. He ran inside, breathless, like he was carrying treasure. Alma was cooking collard greens on the stove, old gospel humming through the kitchen radio. He didn't say a word, just handed it to her. She read it slow. Her lips moved with the words, her hand still holding the letter like it might break in half. Then she smiled, that rare kind, the kind that made the lines on her face soften. "Oh, my baby," she whispered. "Look at God." That night, they ate like it was Thanksgiving, just the two of them. Isaiah didn't say it out loud, but he felt it deep in his chest, like maybe, just maybe, they were stepping out from under something. He fell asleep dreaming about Atlanta, about dorm rooms and debate teams, about walking across campus with his books pressed tight to his chest. He imagined a world that didn't look at him like a problem to solve. But hope is fragile, and some people hate the sound of it. The crash woke him, glass shattering. Then another dot. By the time he ran to the front window, he could see the tail lights of a pickup truck disappearing down Lenox Street. He didn't even have to ask. The living room window was gone. Shards glimmered on the floor like ice. The couch was covered in dust and broken glass. But it wasn't the window that stopped him cold. It was the fence. Spray dash painted, big, red, and sloppy. One word. The word, painted like a wound across the front of their lives. Alma didn't scream this time. She didn't even cry. She just stood there, arms folded, jaw tight, eyes locked on that fence like she could burn it down with a stare. Isaiah went outside to scrub it, hands red from the cold, paint refusing to come off all the way. A neighbor watched from across the street and closed her blinds. Police came late, asked a few questions, wrote nothing down. No one got arrested. Nobody even acted surprised. The next morning, the scholarship letter still sat on the kitchen table. Isaiah didn't want to go anymore, not because he was scared, because he felt tired. Like the moment he started to rise, the world slapped him back down. Alma walked in while he was packing his bag. Quietly, she knelt beside him, hands resting on his shoulders. "You listen to me," she said. "You ain't going to Morehouse to prove them wrong. You go to protect your mind, baby. That's all they can't touch. That's what they're afraid of. A black boy who knows who he is. He didn't respond, but her words stitched something back together inside him. At the bus station, she hugged him tight, slipped a little leather Bible into his coat pocket. You keep that on you, she whispered. Not so you can preach, just so you remember. You come from something stronger than hate. As the bus pulled away, Isaiah looked out the window at Lenox Street. The house, the fence, his mother's hand waving in the distance. The word was still there, faint behind the half-washed paint, but so was the letter in his bag. Two things, side by side, hate and hope. That's how it always was. The air smelled like heat and cut grass. It was supposed to be a homecoming. Isaiah had just gotten off the Greyhound, his suit jacket slung over one shoulder, head full of law books and dreams bigger than Lenox Street. He'd come back for a summer internship at the city courthouse, said it would only be a few months, said he missed Mama's cooking, said he wanted to check on Jamal, make sure his little brother was still walking straight. He didn't expect sirens, didn't expect to hear shouting from the blocks away, didn't expect to see blue and red lights spinning in front of the house, and he damn sure didn't expect to see Jamal on the ground, face down, hands behind his back, a knee pressed into the base of his spine so hard the boy's sneakers kicked against the dirt, like he couldn't breathe. Isaiah froze, just for a second. Then something ancient rose up in him. Not rage control, the kind that looks like calm, but feels like fire. He dropped his bag, walked straight toward the officer. That's my brother, he said, voice even, steady. What's he being arrested for? The cop didn't answer, didn't even look up, just pressed his weight harder into Jamal's back. Jamal's voice cracked, high and panicked. I ain't do nothing, I swear. The neighbors watched from their porches, some with phones out, some with arms crossed. No one moved, just like before. Isaiah knelt beside them. You need to take your knee off his back, he said quietly. Now, the officer glanced up, annoyed. Back off, sir. This is a police matter. I'm a legal intern with the county courthouse, Isaiah said, pulling out his ID. This is a child. You're being filmed. Take your knee off his back, or I swear to God, the department's gonna hear from me before sundown. A pause. The officer stood, slowly, eyes narrow, jaw tight. Jamal gasped and rolled to his side, coughing, arms shaking. Another cruiser pulled up, but by then, it was too late. Isaiah had already memorized the badge number. Later, in the quiet of the kitchen, Alma poured tea like her hands were made of stone. Jamal sat at the table, head down, knees bouncing. He said I look suspicious. Jamal mumbled. Said I matched the description. What description? Isaiah asked. Jamal shrugged. Just said I looked like somebody. That phrase rang in Isaiah's head for hours. He stayed up late that night, pulling court records, arrest logs, civil complaints. He typed with purpose, clicking through decades of digital rot. And then he saw it, a familiar name, same badge, number, different year. The officer who arrested their father was the same one who held Jamal down. Isaiah sat back in his chair, stomach flipping. The man had never been disciplined. Not once. In fact, he'd been promoted 3 times. Commended for public service in a town hall meeting just 5 years earlier. This wasn't just personal. It was systematic. The same hands that dragged Elijah Turner from his home were still gripping the next generation by the throat. Isaiah printed everything. Highlighted, underlined, stapled names and dates together like bricks in a wall he planned to throw straight through the mayor's front window. But even then, he knew this was bigger than one officer. This was a system that aged, but didn't. Changed. A system where black boys get profiled for walking, where family names are passed down like property deeds except the only inheritance is suspicion. Jamal barely spoke the rest of the week, didn't leave the house, didn't eat much, just sat on the edge of the couch, eyes distant, chest still tight like that knee had never left. Isaiah watched his brother retreat, watched the spark in him dim, and in that silence, something clicked. He remembered his father's eyes that day. On the porch. The same look Jamal wore now. That wasn't just trauma. It was a torch, passed down, one Isaiah never asked for, but now he was ready to carry it. Some truths don't hide. They're buried. On purpose, Isaiah had stopped sleeping much. The law degree hanging in his office meant something, but not enough. Not yet. It didn't bring his father back, didn't erase the mark on Jamal's record, and it damn sure didn't explain why that same cop had kept climbing the ladder. while his family kept getting crushed under it. So Isaiah started digging. Not just headlines, not just court verdicts. He wanted the roots. He filed FOIA requests, spent hours in the records office, flipping through manila folders with frayed edges and fading ink. Some pages were blacked out like secrets were still dangerous, even decades later. And then one night, in a storage room with bad lighting and no air conditioning, he found it, tucked inside a mislabeled folder. Buried between zoning permits and fire inspection reports was a memo. One page, stamped confidential. It wasn't about a crime. It was about a meeting. Local rail union. A whistleblower had accused several police officers of accepting bribes from business owners, keeping black workers out of higher paid jobs in exchange for order. Elijah Turner was there. He wasn't just in the room. He took the minutes, signed his name at the bottom of the report. That wasn't an arrest. That was a message. Elijah knew something, and for that, he was erased. Isaiah stood in the hallway of that old county office holding the page in his hand like it might burn through his skin. His father had never had a chance, and now Isaiah had the proof. But power doesn't give up easy. The threats didn't take long. A smashed mailbox, a note, handwritten in block letters, stuffed inside a manila envelope, stay buried. No signature, no return address, just those two words. Jamal found it first. Isaiah didn't flinch. He just taped it to his office wall, right beside the memo, like armor, like proof. Alma was quiet for a long time when he showed her the document. She didn't cry. She didn't yell. She just looked up at him and said, "They always knew what he was worth. That's why they came." The more Isaiah uncovered, the louder the silence around him got. Emails stopped getting answered. One city clerk who'd helped him find records got reassigned. Another warned him to leave the past alone. But it wasn't the past anymore. It was right here, still breathing, still bleeding. And Isaiah, he wasn't just a lawyer anymore. He was a witness, and witnesses don't back down. Isaiah stood behind the podium at the Lenox Town Hall, hands steady, suit pressed, father's eyes in his own. The room was quiet, not out of respect, out of tension. Some folks didn't want him there. Others didn't want to remember. But he wasn't asking. He laid the file on the table. The memo, the arrest report, the names, the missing testimony. He told the story they tried to bury. The room shifted. Some people leaned forward. Some folded their arms tighter. But no one looked away. What followed wasn't quick. Justice never. As he filed the petition to reopen his father's case, brought in legal aid, pushed for access to internal department records. One by one, the pieces came out. Officers who resigned quietly before internal investigations could finish. Men who lived for decades without answering for what they'd done. Isaiah made sure they were named. He did interviews, spoke on local radio, held meetings at the church where Elijah once sang. The town tried to ignore him, but the sound of truth carries. It didn't make everyone a believer, but it made them listen. Months passed, then a year, and then something shifted. The state released an official statement. The arrest of Elijah Turner was procedurally unsound and racially motivated. No criminal record should have followed. Elijah's name was cleared. Just words on paper, maybe, but to Alma, it was a resurrection, and to Isaiah, it was fuel. He pushed further, helped draft policy changes, new oversight roles, community review boards, updated hiring protocols. None of it perfect, but real. The town voted narrowly to build a public memorial in the square, a stone wall etched with the names of those who suffered wrongful arrests, violence, or silence under the color of law. Elijah Turner's name was the first. Jamal stood beside Isaiah the day they unveiled it. He didn't say much. He didn't need to, because by then, Jamal had found his own way. He started volunteering at the school he once skipped. Kids listened to him, maybe because he didn't talk like a teacher. He talked like someone who'd seen things, lived through things, and then one fall morning, Jamal signed the papers. Mr. Jamal Turner, history teacher, the porch on Lenox Street. They rebuilt it, painted it the color of red clay and warm wood, added a bench swing that didn't creak anymore. Now, kids sit there after school, eating popsicles and laughing too loud. Alma waves at them from the kitchen window, and Isaiah, he sits there sometimes, the same spot where it all started. He doesn't look for police cruisers anymore. He doesn't keep one eye on the street, because the fear that used to live in the bones of that house, it's gone. Not because the world fixed itself, but because someone finally refused to stay buried. This isn't just about one man. It's about every child who watches a door slam and thinks it's their fault. Every mother who scrubs the floor. With tears in her mouth, every name left off the record. Lenox Street rose, and so did they.